Nathaniel Pierce was at the pinnacle of success. As the CEO of Pierce Enterprises, he had built a business empire that stretched across continents, influencing industries from technology to real estate. He was a man who had it all: wealth, power, and an enviable lifestyle. Yet, despite his success, Nathaniel was plagued by a lingering emptiness, a feeling that something essential was missing from his life. To the outside world, he was a charismatic and driven leader, but behind closed doors, Nathaniel was a man who had grown tired of the superficial relationships that came with his status. It was a chilly autumn evening when Nathaniel decided to escape the high-profile world he inhabited. The relentless pressures of his corporate life had worn him down, and he needed a break. A moment to disconnect from the demanding schedules, endless meetings, and the constant media scrutiny that accompanied his every move. For once, he wanted to be just another man, not the billionaire CEO everyone expected him to be. He found himself wandering into a small, unassuming bar tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The bar was far from the glitzy venues he usually frequented. It had a rustic charm, with dark wooden beams and soft, ambient lighting. The clientele was a mix of locals and the occasional passerby, each absorbed in their own world. It was the perfect place for Nathaniel to blend in and enjoy some anonymity. Nathaniel took a seat at the bar, ordering a whiskey neat. As he sipped his drink, he allowed himself to unwind, feeling the weight of the world slowly lift off his shoulders. For the first time in a long while, he felt at peace, away from the endless demands and expectations that came with his name. As he sat there, his attention was drawn to a woman sitting alone at a corner table. She was strikingly beautiful, but not in the overly polished way he was accustomed to. Her dark hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and her deep brown eyes held a quiet intensity. She was dressed simply, in a way that exuded confidence without trying too hard. There was something about her, something different, that captivated him. Their eyes met briefly, and in that fleeting moment, Nathaniel felt an inexplicable connection. It was as if the noise and distractions of the world faded away, leaving just the two of them in that dimly lit bar. Intrigued, Nathaniel decided to approach her. He was used to women vying for his attention, but this time, he was the one who felt compelled to make the first move. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, his voice smooth yet tentative, as he gestured to the chair across from her. The woman looked up, a small smile playing on her lips. "No, please, have a seat," she replied, her tone welcoming yet cautious. Nathaniel introduced himself simply as Nathan, deliberately omitting his last name. He was curious to see how the evening would unfold without the influence of his reputation. The woman introduced herself as Lila, her voice warm and melodic. She seemed relaxed, yet there was a hint of something beneath the surface, a story untold, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. As they talked, Nathaniel found himself captivated by Lila's intelligence and wit. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, touching on a range of topics from literature and art to travel and life's simple pleasures. She was refreshingly different from the women he usually encountered, unpretentious, thoughtful, and with a depth that intrigued him. Nathaniel, who was so used to the transactional nature of his relationships, found himself genuinely enjoying Lila's company. As the evening progressed, the bar grew quieter, with only a few patrons left. The dim lighting cast a warm glow over their table, creating an intimate atmosphere. They laughed together, shared stories of their pasts, and for the first time in years, Nathaniel felt a connection that was real and unforced. As the night deepened, the chemistry between them became palpable. There was a spark in the air, a magnetic pull that neither could deny. When their hands brushed against each other's, it was as if a current passed between them, igniting a desire that had been simmering all evening. "Would you like to get out of here?" Nathaniel asked softly, his eyes locking onto hers, searching for any hesitation. Lila hesitated for a brief moment, as if weighing her options, but the attraction she felt for him was undeniable. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with anticipation. They left the bar together, the cool night air enveloping them as they walked to a nearby hotel. The city lights flickered around them, but they were lost in their own world, their hearts racing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. Nathaniel led the way to the hotel, his mind whirling with thoughts of what was to come. The night was filled with passion, an intense, fiery connection that left them both breathless. It was as if all the loneliness and longing they had each carried were momentarily extinguished by the fire they found in each other. They explored every inch of one another, discovering each other's secrets with every touch and kiss. The world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them in a cocoon of warmth and desire. By the time the first light of dawn began to seep through the curtains, both were exhausted yet content. Nathaniel had fallen asleep, lulled by the rhythm of Lila's breathing beside him. But when he awoke later that morning, she was gone. All that remained was a note on the pillow, her handwriting neat and precise. "Thank you for a wonderful evening. I had to leave early. Take care. Lila." Nathaniel stared at the note, a strange sense of loss washing over him. She had slipped away like a dream, leaving him with nothing but memories of their night together. He realized he didn't even know her last name, where she was from, or anything substantial about her life. It was as if she had been a phantom, appearing briefly in his world and then disappearing just as quickly. He tucked the note into his pocket, feeling a mix of regret and curiosity. He didn't try to find her, telling himself it was better this way. It had been a fleeting connection, a moment of escape from his reality, nothing more. And yet, deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that Lila had left a mark on him, one that wouldn't easily fade. 5 years had passed since that night, and Nathaniel's life had only grown more demanding. Pierce Enterprises had expanded into new markets, becoming a global powerhouse. Nathaniel was more successful than ever, yet the void in his life had only deepened. He was constantly surrounded by people, yet always felt alone. The memory of Lila lingered in the back of his mind, like a haunting melody that he couldn't forget. Nathaniel's days were a blur of meetings, business deals, and social obligations. He had built an empire, but in doing so, he had lost touch with the things that truly mattered. The more successful he became, the more he felt like a spectator in his own life, watching as the years slipped by without meaning. One evening, Nathaniel found himself at a charity gala, a typical event in his world, filled with the city's elite, all dressed in their finest attire. The gala was in support of a children's hospital, a cause that Nathaniel cared about deeply. He was one of the event's main sponsors, and his presence was expected, even though his mind was elsewhere. The ballroom was grand, with crystal chandeliers casting a soft glow over the elegantly dressed crowd. Waiters weaved through the guests, offering champagne and canapes, while a live band played soft jazz in the background. Nathaniel made his way through the crowd, exchanging polite smiles and handshakes, his thoughts far from the event at hand. As he moved through the room, his attention was caught by a familiar face. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized Lila, standing across the room, talking to an older woman. She looked different from how he remembered, more refined, her features more mature, but there was no mistaking those deep brown eyes that had haunted his dreams. Nathaniel's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't seen Lila since that night, and yet here she was, standing before him as if no time had passed at all. His mind raced with questions. What was she doing here? Did she recognize him? Was this a coincidence, or had fate brought them together once again? Without thinking, Nathaniel made his way over to her, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves. As he approached, Lila turned and their eyes met. Her expression shifted from surprise to something more guarded, as if she was bracing herself for what was to come. "Nathan," she said, her voice calm but tinged with an edge of unease. She didn't use his full name, and Nathaniel realized that she had recognized him for who he truly was, Nathaniel Pierce, the Billionaire CEO, not just Nathan from that night. "Lila," Nathaniel replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions swirling within him. "It's been a long time." "Yes, it has," Lila said, her eyes searching his face as if trying to read his thoughts. "How have you been?" "I've been busy," Nathaniel said, realizing how inadequate that word was to describe the whirlwind his life had become. "And you?" "I've been well," Lila replied, though there was a hesitation in her voice that Nathaniel couldn't ignore. Before Nathaniel could ask more, their conversation was interrupted by a small boy, about 4 years old, who came running up to Lila, tugging at her dress. "Mommy, can I have some juice?" he asked, his voice bright and innocent. Nathaniel froze, his eyes shifting from the boy to Lila. The boy had dark hair and familiar blue eyes, Nathaniel's eyes. His heart pounded in his chest as the realization began to dawn on him. He looked back at Lila, his mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. "Lila," Nathaniel said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, "is he?" Lila nodded, her expression conflicted, her eyes filling with a mixture of emotions: fear, regret, and something that looked like hope. "Yes, Nathan," she said quietly, "he's your son." The words hit Nathaniel like a sledgehammer. His son. He had a son, a child he had no idea existed until this very moment. His mind struggled to catch up with the revelation, each thought a chaotic mess of shock, confusion, and a deep, gnawing guilt. "Why didn't you tell me?" Nathaniel asked, his voice rough and edged with emotion. The world around him seemed to shrink, the noise of the gala fading into a distant hum as he focused solely on Lila and the little boy standing beside her. Lila took a deep breath, her gaze dropping to the floor before she looked up to meet his eyes. "I didn't know how to reach you," she began, her voice steady but tinged with an undercurrent of emotion. "We didn't exchange numbers that night, and I didn't even know your full name until I saw you on television months later. By then, I was already pregnant, and I didn't want to disrupt your life. I wasn't sure if you'd even want to be involved." Nathaniel's chest tightened with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "You should have told me," he said, struggling to keep his emotions in check. "I had a right to know." "I know," Lila said softly, her eyes brimming with tears, "but I was scared. I didn't want to force you into something you might not have wanted. I didn't want you to feel obligated. I decided to raise him on my own, and I didn't think you'd ever want to be part of our lives." Nathaniel looked down at the boy, who was still holding onto Lila's dress, watching the interaction with wide, curious eyes. The boy, his son, was a living, breathing part of him, and the realization hit Nathaniel with full force. He felt an overwhelming surge of protectiveness, a fierce desire to make up for lost time and be there for the child he had unknowingly fathered. "What's his name?" Nathaniel asked, his voice softening as he knelt down to the boy's level, trying to mask the storm of emotions brewing inside him. "His name is Oliver," Lila replied, her voice trembling slightly. Nathaniel smiled gently, reaching out a hand to the boy. "Hi, Oliver," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. "I'm Nathan. It's nice to meet you." Oliver looked at Nathaniel with a mixture of curiosity and shyness, glancing up at Lila for reassurance. When she nodded encouragingly, Oliver hesitated for a moment before offering a small, shy smile. "Hi," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. As Nathaniel looked into Oliver's eyes, he felt a deep connection that went beyond words, a bond that had been forged the moment Oliver was born, even if Nathaniel hadn't known it at the time. It was a bond that would now shape the rest of his life. Lila watched the interaction between Nathaniel and Oliver with a mix of relief and apprehension. She had never imagined this moment would come, and now that it was here, she wasn't sure how to navigate the emotions swirling inside her. She had raised Oliver on her own, never expecting Nathaniel to be a part of their lives. But seeing them together now, she realized how much Oliver resembled his father, not just in appearance but in his mannerisms. The way he tilted his head when he was curious, the way his eyes sparkled when he smiled. Nathaniel stood up, his mind racing with thoughts of the future. He knew this moment was a turning point. Nothing in his life would ever be the same. He had a son, and that changed everything. "Lila," Nathaniel said, his voice filled with a determination that surprised even him. "I want to be a part of Oliver's life. I want to be there for him, to be the father he deserves. I've missed so much already, but I don't want to miss anything else." Lila looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Are you sure, Nathan?" she asked, her voice wavering. "This isn't something you can walk away from once you've committed. This is about more than just you and me. It's about Oliver's future. I need to know that you're serious about this." Nathaniel didn't hesitate. "I'm sure," he said firmly. "I've spent too much of my life focusing on business, on success. But none of that means anything compared to this. I want to be there for Oliver, and I want to be there for you, too. Whatever it takes, I'll do it." Lila studied him for a moment, searching his face for any sign of doubt. But all she saw was a man who was determined, who was ready to take responsibility for his actions and embrace the life that had been waiting for him all along. Slowly, she nodded, a small smile spreading across her face. "Okay, Nathan," she said softly, "let's take this one step at a time." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change for Nathaniel, Lila, and Oliver. Nathaniel made every effort to integrate himself into Oliver's life, determined to make up for the lost time. He visited Lila and Oliver regularly, spending time with his son and learning the nuances of fatherhood, an experience that was both overwhelming and exhilarating. Nathaniel quickly realized that being a father wasn't something that could be done halfway. It required time, patience, and a level of emotional investment that he had never experienced before. He learned how to navigate the challenges of parenting, from helping Oliver with his homework to playing with him at the park. Each day was a new lesson, and Nathaniel embraced every moment with a determination that surprised even him. But it wasn't just about Oliver. As Nathaniel spent more time with Lila, he began to see her in a new light. The woman he had met that night in the bar had grown into a strong, independent mother who had dedicated her life to raising their son. Lila had a quiet strength that he admired, and the more he got to know her, the more he realized how much he had missed by not being a part of her life from the beginning. Lila, too, found herself opening up to Nathaniel in ways she hadn't expected. She had spent the past 5 years building a life for herself and Oliver, never expecting Nathaniel to re-enter their world. But as she watched him interact with their son, she couldn't help but feel a growing respect and admiration for the man Nathaniel had become. He was different from the man she had met that night, more mature, more thoughtful, and genuinely committed to being a part of their lives. One evening, after spending the day at the park with Oliver, Nathaniel and Lila found themselves alone in her living room, the soft glow of the setting sun casting a warm light over the room. Oliver was asleep in his bedroom, leaving the two of them with a rare moment of quiet. Lila poured them each a glass of wine, and they sat together on the couch, talking about the day and the changes that had come into their lives. As they talked, Nathaniel found himself drawn to Lila in a way that went beyond their shared history. He had always been attracted to her, but now he saw her as a partner, someone he could build a future with. "Lila," Nathaniel said after a long pause, his voice filled with emotion, "I want to thank you for raising Oliver, for being there for him when I wasn't. I know I can't change the past, but I want to be part of your life, both of your lives, moving forward." Lila looked at him, her eyes softening as she took in his words. "Nathan, you don't have to thank me," she said gently. "I did what I had to do, but I'm glad you're here now. I'm glad you're part of Oliver's life." "And yours?" Nathaniel asked, his voice filled with hope. Lila hesitated for a moment, then nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Yes," she said softly, "and mine." As the weeks turned into months, Nathaniel and Lila continued to rebuild their relationship, one step at a time. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension, moments of doubt, but they were committed to making it work. They spent time together as a family, taking Oliver on outings, sharing meals, and slowly beginning to envision a future where they were all together. Nathaniel's commitment to Lila and Oliver extended beyond just spending time with them. He began to make changes in his life to prioritize them. He restructured his work schedule, delegating more responsibilities to his executives so that he could spend more time with his family. He even started looking for a new home, somewhere they could all live together as a family, away from the bustling city and closer to the quiet life that Lila had built for herself and Oliver. As they grew closer, Nathaniel and Lila's feelings for each other began to deepen. What had started as a one-night stand 5 years ago was now turning into something real, something lasting. They were no longer just co-parents. They were becoming partners, confidants, and, slowly but surely, something more. But even as they moved forward, there were still obstacles to overcome. Nathaniel's past, his life as a billionaire CEO, wasn't something that could be easily left behind. There were media reports, rumors, and speculation about his relationship with Lila and the sudden appearance of a child in his life. Nathaniel did his best to shield Lila and Oliver from the spotlight, but it was a constant battle. Lila, too, had her own doubts and fears. She had spent years being independent, raising Oliver on her own, and now she was learning to trust Nathaniel, to let him in and allow him to share in the responsibilities of parenting. It wasn't easy to let go of the control she had held onto for so long, but she knew that it was necessary if they were going to build a life together. The day dawned bright and clear, the early morning sun casting a golden light over the quiet suburban neighborhood where Lila and Oliver lived. It was a day that marked a new beginning, a day that would bring Nathaniel, Lila, and Oliver together as a family in a way they had never been before. Nathaniel had spent the past few months preparing for this moment. He had found a beautiful house on the outskirts of the city, a place where they could all live together, away from the constant demands of his corporate life. It was a house filled with light, with a large backyard where Oliver could play, and plenty of space for the family they were becoming. Today, they were moving in together, taking the next step in their journey as a family. Nathaniel arrived early that morning, his car loaded with boxes of their belongings. He had spent the past few weeks packing up his old life, ready to start anew with Lila and Oliver. As he pulled into the driveway, he saw Lila and Oliver waiting for him on the porch, their faces lit up with excitement. Oliver ran down the steps as soon as he saw Nathaniel, his arms outstretched. "Daddy," Oliver called out, his voice filled with joy as he ran toward Nathaniel. Nathaniel's heart swelled with emotion as he scooped Oliver up into his arms, holding him close. It was the first time Oliver had called him Daddy, and the word brought tears to Nathaniel's eyes. He had longed for this moment, the moment when he would truly be a father to his son. "Hey, buddy," Nathaniel said, his voice choked with emotion. "Are you ready to move into our new home?" Oliver nodded enthusiastically, his eyes shining with excitement. "Yes, I want to see my new room." Nathaniel laughed, setting Oliver down and ruffling his hair. "Let's go check it out, then." Lila watched the interaction between Nathaniel and Oliver with a smile, her heart filled with a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. She walked over to Nathaniel, wrapping her arms around him in a hug. "Thank you, Nathan," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for everything." Nathaniel held her close, his heart filled with a sense of contentment he had never known before. "Thank you, Lila," he replied, his voice equally soft, "for giving me a chance to be part of your life, part of Oliver's life. I'm so grateful to be here with you." They spent the day moving into the house, unpacking boxes, and setting up their new home. It was a day filled with laughter, with moments of quiet reflection, and with the simple joy of being together. As the sun began to set, they found themselves sitting on the back porch, watching as Oliver played in the yard, his laughter filling the air. Nathaniel wrapped his arm around Lila, pulling her close as they watched their son. "We've come a long way," he said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. "Yes, we have," Lila agreed, resting her head on his shoulder. "And we've still got a long way to go, but we'll do it together." Nathaniel looked down at her, his heart swelling with love for the woman who had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. "I love you, Lila," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I'm so glad we found each other again." Lila looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears. "I love you too, Nathan," she whispered, her voice breaking, "and I'm glad we're here, together, as a family." As the last light of the day faded into twilight, Nathaniel, Lila, and Oliver sat together on the porch, watching the stars come out one by one. It was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, a chapter filled with hope, with love, and with the promise of a future that they would build together as a family. Years later, Nathaniel would look back on that night in the bar, the night that had changed everything, with a sense of profound gratitude. What had started as a chance encounter had blossomed into a life filled with love and meaning. He had found not only a son but a partner in Lila, someone who had stood by him through the challenges and joys of their journey together. Pierce Enterprises continued to thrive, but Nathaniel had learned to balance his work with his life at home. He was no longer just a billionaire CEO. He was a father, a partner, and a man who had discovered what truly mattered in life. Oliver grew up in a home filled with love, surrounded by parents who adored him and who had built a life that was rich in all the ways that counted. As he grew older, he came to understand the story of how his parents had found each other again, and it became a story that he cherished, a story of love, of second chances, and of the family that had come from a single, unforgettable night. And as Nathaniel watched his son grow, as he shared his life with Lila, he knew that he had found what he had been searching for all along. Not in the boardrooms or the skyscrapers of his business empire, but in the quiet, everyday moments that made up the fabric of their life together. It was a life filled with love, with laughter, and with the kind of happiness that only comes when you find the people who make your life complete. And for Nathaniel Pierce, that was everything. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy the story. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more delightful stories.